Yeah, I forgot the show started that way. Hey everybody, it's me, Wanny. I'm doing a different type of video today. I'm not going to read off a script. I'm not going to do a scripted thing. And we're going to talk about this new show that I watched the other day called Rust Eater Bisco that I think is really cool and I'm really excited to talk about. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to watch the episode and I'm going to talk about it and pause every now and again, and we'll come back over here to me talking and I'll say some stuff. So the first shot of the show that we actually see is just a giant city, and then there's an explosion. Smash cut to a giant city and a sign that says Tokyo Explosion Zone. So you're like, oh, well, Tokyo exploded. The next shot you see, you get a guy walking through the desert next to a tank and some highways, and he's got this giant animal with him carrying a cart. I really like the design of his bandages on his face. I think they look really cool. And I really like the fact that they used hippos in this. He gets to this checkpoint and the guy's like, oh, your passport's not working through the passport machine. And you get this nice little shot of the side of this monk's face. Wanted poster in the background. And it's like, oh, it's obviously the wanted guy under the bandages. I think that's a really cool shot. He tells him that his name is something that's obviously fake, and he's like, oh, well, what's your real name? And he's like, oh, well, I'm a monk, I don't have my real name anymore. I cast it off. So after we leave from this checkpoint scene, we go into the big city where we meet our new main character, Milo, who is a doctor who's working in the city to treat a disease that's called rust. There is a thing called rust winds in the universe that make everything rust away and just kind of become useless. And that includes humans, and Milo's trying to fix that through the use of illegal mushrooms. And an Akira reference too. It's pretty cool. And then we start getting a lot of shots of the city, and we get a close-up of an iguana, and you start seeing a lot of influence here, which I think is really cool. We've got Dorohedoro kinds of influences. We've got desert punk influences. We've got Blade Runner. And that's what the show ends up actually becoming that I think is really cool. This thing is just a giant mishmash of tropes and shonen ideas that I think work really well from other shows. And I think that's why the show is going to be successful. Something I don't like about this first episode is we get this scene with this lady who's obviously running a brothel that Milo is working at to be a back alley doctor. Basically, he's seeing patients in here. He's seeing a guy and his son and everything. But we get this long, drawn-out scene of this woman just dumping exposition for I don't know how long the scene actually goes on. I want to say it goes on for like a solid minute. It's just too much. We get a really weird scene here where Milo is treating a girl behind some blinds, and they're making a lot of sex puns.
Stop squirming.
I would, but it's bigger than I thought.
It got a smirk out of me. I'll admit it. So Milo leaves the clinic / brothel, apparently. And he goes down the alleyway and he goes down to like a soup shop and he buys illicit substances from the soup shop. And the soup shop owner's like, oh, well, I can't take money from you. You're too much of a nice guy, right? He's like, oh, you saved my son. So we get this like overwhelming beating us over the head thing that Milo is an extremely nice individual. But he's buying the drugs. Milo gets home and this is where we first start seeing a lot of characters starting to look like characters from other TV shows. It hasn't really happened very much. We kind of had the cop at the beginning who kind of looked like an Ace Attorney character or just a generic fat cop from 99% of fat cop anime, everybody's favorite genre of anime. Anyways, Milo comes home and he sees his sister, and she's obviously very inspired by what we said she looked like she was from One Piece. She just doesn't look proportionally right, and I'm kind of even going to say that she looks a little bit more like a Yu-Gi-Oh character. Her hair is just so big, and it just feels like it's a plastic Lego hair, you know? Like, it doesn't feel like it flows or anything. And she's obviously sick, and she's watching the TV, and she's got the rust on her chest, and you can see the cleavage and the boobah. And Milo goes in there, and she's scolding him for making medication, but he's making it out of mushrooms to help the community because he's such a good heart and a good soul. So we get back to the scene with the monk and the boarder, and he's like, oh, well, wait, am I missing something here? Why would a monk have a giant thing full of stuff in a carriage that's covered? He's like, oh, it's dead bodies. They're like, oh, okay, well, it's dead bodies. So the cop's like, young child, you go check the dead bodies. And then the monk says, oh, I wouldn't do that. There's insects in there. They bite. They're really mean. Back to Milo. We just see Milo back at his apartment, and then he leaves and he goes to the shop again where he bought those mushrooms. And then he buys more stuff, and then some kid just pickpockets him, just runs into him, grabs the bag, and runs off. Milo chases him, and there's like this badass breakbeat soundtrack. I remember there's a name for this drum beat, but I don't remember what it is. I'm gonna sound like an idiot.
Where do you...
Anyways, Milo catches the kid, and he's like, oh, you're wounded, you're hungry, oh, you've got this like bite from a really bad insect on your eye, let me cut into that. We're gonna have to bleed that a little bit or you're gonna lose your eye. So he does that and he heals the kid. And then all of a sudden they're surrounded. Let me put it this way. They're standing in the alleyway, he's talking to a kid, and then this motherfucker shows up. Right, he's got people in suits behind him with rabbit head, and he looks like a character straight out of Hellsing. He's apparently the governor, and he says, "Oh well, you Milo, you get more beautiful every time that I see you." So it's heavily implied that he's fucking the governor. I forgot that he says earlier as well, oh, well, thanks to the synthesization machines that the government is giving us, we can do all the back alley doctor work we want. But apparently that's over because Governor Hellsing shows up. I don't know what his actual name is. We just kept calling him Governor Hellsing. And all hell breaks loose when the guard says, oh, well, you know what, I thought that monks couldn't carry bows. And then he says, why? We're not, restricted from killing when hunting. And he's like, no, it's not that. You're restricted from using ranged weapons. We jump a little bit into where Milo is back into the city. And this new guy is running around with a bow that looks like the monks. And he's running around with red hair, and mushrooms are sprouting from the ground, and the music is playing, and the music is badass, and it's like the Matrix soundtrack, but he's got a bow.
It's a mushroom keeper!
How did he get in the city?
Don't breathe in the spores or you'll rust!
There's rabbits jumping out of helicopters, and then the helicopter explodes into mushrooms. It's wacky, dude, I'm telling you. Like Scoob, you're not gonna believe it, Scoob. They've got him playing the video games, man. He eats the mushroom. The guy who's running around with the bow, he lands, and there's a giant mushroom that he makes. And then you see it on TV, and then the TV turns off, and then the sister who's sick and has got all the rust, she starts suiting up and getting badass, and it's the Matrix, and...
They brought the rust. I'd love to see him rot.
So we cut back to Milo, and he goes back into his house, and he sees his sister, and she's armoring up, and she's ready to get out, and he's like, no, you're too sick, you can't go outside. And she's like, oh, but I have to. My job is more important than my life, or the life of people is more important than my life, or something. And then she does a Vulcan neck pinch, or whatever the hell. One of the people that works for the governor that had the little bunny hat on, she gets dragged up in front of the governor for failing or something, and he's disappointed, and she says that I'll get him next time. Don't worry, boss. We go back into Milo's house, and Milo is waking up, and he's like, oh, well, I guess she left. She got me. Then he gets out all of his mushrooms that he got earlier, and he's like, oh, well, I don't know what any of these do, but surely one of these can fix the crazy disease. And then he hears a voice from behind him. There's actually this kind of terrifying scene where you think for a second, like, oh, this is that terrorist guy. He's in his house. He's just got like a wounded man with him, and the scene's really well lit. And the terrorist in this situation is, he's much taller than Milo is. There's an intimidating factor behind it. It's a really cool scene. I really like it. And the music that plays during it isn't too bad either.
Medicine, right? You're the terrorist. The man-eating redcap. Akaboshi.
And then scene. That's pretty much how it ends. He says his name, and he's like, oh, well, my name's Bisco. I've watched a couple more episodes of this. I just wanted to kind of cover the first one, but I watched the rest of them. I think it's got a lot of potential. I'd say watch maybe the first 3 episodes, maybe up to the first 5. Give it a shot. I think this has a lot of potential. I think it's taken a lot of good tropes and a lot of good stuff from different shonen anime, and it's putting it all into a pot. We've got a little bit of Trigun here. We've got a little bit of Full Metal Alchemist. We've got a little bit of Naruto. We've got a little bit of just everything. Just all the best pieces of each. Got a little bit of Hellsing. Got a little bit of One Piece in there. And the world just gets more Dorohedoro as time goes on. The more the show goes on, it's like, oh, of course they're using hippos to shoot cannons, and of course the main character rides a crab around. Why wouldn't he? The world is fantastical, and for the first time in a long time, I feel like I'm excited to watch an anime where I have no idea what's coming. I have no idea. They've set it up like a Philosopher's Stone-esque journey, so it's just the medicine journey, so it could literally become anything. And I'm excited to see the vision of the world that this produces. I know that it was like a light novel or a visual novel or something before, and that kind of worries me. Depending on how this goes, I think that Rust Eater Bisco could end up being one of the best new anime. One of the big ones, For now, from what I've seen, I guess out of 10, maybe a 9, maybe a great. So maybe a low 9, high 8 situation. I'm very excited. I'm definitely going to watch the rest of it. I definitely want to see where it goes, and I definitely want to see what they end up making with it. That's all for this video. I hope that you guys like this non-scripted, just me talking into a microphone format. I think it's kind of stupid. I might scrap all of this. I might not be able to use any of it. I might just say, to hell with all of this recording and not use any of it, because it's just causing me a great anxiety. Now I'm sitting here actually thinking about it, and I'm like, my God, I'm gonna have to parse through all